is why you should never have Josh Rimmer on a pre-show.
They've heard worse from me, X. So
yeah. Well, Ty, tell me if Red Sox fans aren't rubbing their hands with glee at the possibility that the last series of the regular season, which will be the last series for them for the season because they're not going to make the postseason, is at Fenway against the Yankees. And if the Yankees are in, and Jeter and end of his career, if the Yankees are fighting for a wild card spot, how much they would love it if they could screw the Yankees in the last 3 games of the regular season.
Oh yeah, I mean they'd love it, but it's at this point the lineup is like who?
Yeah.
Who's pitching? So it's like they're still complaining about Lester and not re-signing him, and that's probably how that will stay for a long time anyways. Especially if they don't bring him back like some way, which I don't think they will. When's the last time a guy's left the team and then at the deadline and then come back like they take a hometown discount? I just
Keith Kachuk. That's the Keith Kachuk move.
Yeah.
But no, actually, what was it? I think it was 3 years ago when the Leafs had missed the playoffs again, and the last game as tradition, it's either in Toronto or in Montreal against the Habs. And if they would have beaten Montreal in regulation, they would have eliminated them from the playoffs. And they were tied 3-3 like late in the third and almost scored to eliminate them. And I'm not sure if that's the year they played the Bruins in the first round. It might have been. It was one of the Ron Wolfson years, but it would have made Leaf fans' entire season if they had eliminated the Habs on the last day in the last game.
Spite's a great motivator. Spite. Yeah. Nothing like spite.
Well, the Minnesota Wild Dallas Stars, I mean, Dallas that game, and that cost Mark Crawford his job, so.
True.
Where is he now?
Switzerland, I believe. Yeah, I think he's coaching in the Swiss League, although he supposedly was in the mix for Vancouver before they hired drawing a blank. Who did they just hire as their coach?
Willie Desjardins.
Willie Desjardins, thank you.
You're welcome. I was swigging water. I would have told you earlier.
Yeah.
Instead of you struggling.
Sure, it's water, Josh. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're swigging absolute vodka.
Friday,
Come on.
We got to do the drinking Friday.
I got to do my green shake after this. So. God.
That'll help you.
I saw some green shake. It was called Zoe Saldana in the movie Guardians of the Galaxy.
Did you go see it?
Not yet, no. I'm probably not going to see it. I'll wait till it comes out on Netflix or something like that.
Oh, you have to see it IMAX.
Yeah, you got to go. I agree. I'm with Ty. You got to go in the theater.
And you know what? After seeing Zoe, I had a craving for a green shake.
Dave Bautista for Best Supporting Actor for the next Academy Awards.
He said like 5 words in the movie.
All of them being gold. Just amazing.
Yeah. No, they were good. They were good words. I agree with you.
It was a good movie. I was very impressed. I didn't know. I went in not expecting much. I didn't know what to expect because I never read the comics.
Okay, a sign that you're getting old, and I guess I'm old. I worked at a movie theater in my 20s.
That's a sign you're getting old right there, Mike.
Worked at a movie theater in my 20s, and one of the more horrific movies that we had because it was so busy and it was all kids was the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
And now they're remaking that atrocity.
Yep.
Again. I mean, really.
We talked about that yesterday. How there's no.
I know we mentioned it, but I associate that movie with picking up large amounts of popcorn off of a floor and pop and all that wonderful stuff.
You know what movie I was really impressed with?
I was right in the middle of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was too old for Teenage Mutant.
Say that 20 times fast, Zach.
Just a little bit too old for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Ty, you're definitely got to be in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles era.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. That and the live-action Super Mario Bros. Movies. That was
good call.
I like the Ninja Turtle rap. That was my favorite. With Vanilla Ice.
Oh yeah, that was what rappers were rappers. We wouldn't do anything for money.
Exactly. Hey, a movie I saw yesterday after the podcast, fantastic. It blew me away. I was not expecting it. Was Draft Day. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah,
With
I
Kevin
want to see
Costner?
that Costner movie. It looked
Amazing.
The preview was
Amazing.
terrible.
Oh, the previews don't do it justice. It was a fantastic. You know what? It's up there in one of my favorite sports movies now. I was that impressed with it. Yeah.
Heck, I was gonna say that's a webcast that we should do sometime. Our favorite hockey movies or favorite sports movies.
Yeah. Draft Day was awesome. I've
heard nothing but good things about it. I almost saw it when I was where was I?
I mean, I like Costner. The previews did not do it any favors. It looked cheesy.
Yeah, it did, but it was really good. Like it was like really in depth into what happens on a draft day, and I'm sure there's some similarities to what happened with hockey, but it was awesome. It was really good. I don't want to give away any of the movie, but if you want to see a really good sports movie, it's probably the best one I've seen in a while, except for one that didn't really make a lot of movie theaters, but it was good, and that's Underdogs with D.B. Sweeney, which was really good as well. Football movie.
It was, huh?
Yeah, that was a good one. That was
I have to say that but while we're waiting here, I have to say.
Sorry.
Okay. I have to say that I didn't understand all the hubbub about the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson. I understand.
Yeah.
I understand the significance of the story. The thing is, maybe because I know the story of Jackie Robinson, and the purpose of the movie was to educate people trials and tribulations that he went through. That maybe that movie was more directed toward them. I just thought it was sort of a cookie cutter.
I wasn't really impressed with the movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and Harrison Ford, who I normally love in every movie, was distracting as Branch Rickey, sort of with the scrunched up face and the cigar in his mouth, and I mean,
that movie was too hyped for me.
Yeah, I'm much more excited to see Harrison Ford in Expendables 3 next week.
Oh.
We're 7, man.
Expendables 3 with Jet Li, Dolph Lundgren, Mel Gibson, and every other action star you can think of.
And Frasier.
And Kelsey Grammer.
Kelsey Grammer, man. There's a man who can drink. I was at a party once with Chelsea Grammer.
Oh.
I have a copy of Expendables 3 already, if you could believe that.
Okay, the video piracy police are going to come after you.
I didn't pay for it. And they didn't, so it's not illegal.
Not getting any better, Josh.
I'm just gonna shut my mouth.
Yeah, just keep increasing the indictment there, Josh.
Not.
Doesn't it?
Oh, I didn't pay for it. That's fine. Yeah. All right, I am so close, guys. Sorry, I'm just downloading these brackets, and we'll be set.
Oh, okay.
There's one problem with working on my other computer. Sorry about that. So. Almost 2 more brackets to go. Because I think this is fun. I think we're gonna like this. I'm guessing it's fun. We're gonna find out soon.
Oh, you know what? I made a mistake. It's Expendables 2.
Very soon.
Ah, yeah. There you go. Sure. It
is. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think that was. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not even out in theaters yet.
Guardians of the Galaxy is very gettable, by the way.
It's very gettable?
Yeah, if you're not interested in going to the movies. Just saying. Not that I do that kind of stuff, but...
It's the Hockey Buzz Pirate Movie Cast here on HockeyBuzz.com.
I have a friend, a very good friend, who does that kind of... A friend, yes. Yes, he's very good. All right, so let's hit this thing. All right.
Please don't hit me.
No, I'm not going to hit you. Let's see how the best to do this. I'm going to do this in the most dramatic way possible, so that's what I'm trying to figure out here. All right, cool. Not that, this is super dramatic, but it's kind of fun. All right. Hold on. Almost there. Cool.
Hey, Mike, you were talking about remakes before and what a joke it is. How about them remaking Scarface? Oh, it makes me angry.
I didn't hear about that. Who's Pacino? Who's playing Pacino?
I don't know, but I know Rene Russo. Was it Rene Russo who was in that
Is it
movie,
Mike Russo?
or Michelle Pfeiffer? It was Michelle Pfeiffer, right?
Michelle Pfeiffer. Yeah.
Mike
Rih-
Russo is Scarface.
Rihanna's playing.
Oh, okay. So they're making
Google
they're
it.
making it they're making it a okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I'm not-
ridiculous.
please. I mean, please.
How do you remake Scarface? Seriously.
See, the problem with doing a winter sport is that all you can talk about in the summer are movies because it's all it's out right now, right? So
The problem, Josh, the thing is that Scarface is a remake of, it was Paul Muni. I mean, it's been remade 3 or 4 times, so it's.
Yeah.
But once you have the definitive, Pacino, the Tony Montana Scarface, you really,
exactly.
it shouldn't be done. It's like remaking the Godfather. You don't do it.
This says Scarface remake about Mexican drug cartels.
Yeah. So. Yeah, they're changing.
I've never seen a movie about Mexican drug cartels. It's gonna be great. They never make movies about that. That's one substance. That's one group of people out there that's just never appreciated for their evilness. All right, here we go. I am sat down. All right, we're gonna start here.
This is disgusting.
Mike, Josh, Ty.
Mike, Josh, Ty. All right, guys. And today is the 8th of August, and we're going to be joined on Monday. We're going to be joined by Katie Brown,
Okay.
Washington. You know Katie Brown, Ty?
No, I don't actually.
Okay, Washington blogger. She's good. She's good. It's gonna be fun.
Who does write for?
I can't remember who Katie writes for. It's horrible, but it's she works. I follow her on Twitter and I read her stuff all the time. But it's the kind of thing like I clicked her articles, but I have no idea where they are. Huh? Mike, you can find out in a second.
I'll check it. Yeah.
Hold on, let me see. Because she's nice. We met her at the draft, and she's gonna be a nice addition on Monday. We'll have her on. All right.
I just posted in the in our group chat the article if you want to read it later about the remake of Scarface.
Okay.
Tony Montana becomes Mexican American.
Tony Montana.
Montana.
Her blog is on something called the District Sports page. So
Right.
She's
got
a
small town.
local Washington blogger.
Like a newspaper, I think. Actually, they print that thing. I think.
Yeah, Washington's got some good bloggers. It's kind
They
of
do.
one of the hidden gems, I think, of the hockey writing world.
They really do. They really do. We've got a good one too. He's awesome, but we're
Yeah.
gonna have him on as well. All right, here we go. Let's go. We'll just go Mike, Ty, Josh in that order. Is that good?
So
Yeah.
I'm last now?
Yeah, you're always last, Josh.
Oh, okay.
That's part.
I don't want to get confused, so I don't show you the deer in headlights look.
That's part of your thing,
Right.
Yeah.
That's always your look.
Yeah, that's always your like. That's true. All right,
So what is it again? I'm
you're
Just
second.
follow me, Ty. You
All
say
right.
after.
Right after
All
Mike. All right, here we go. Hey, Hockey World! It's Friday, August 8th, 2014.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Ty Anderson.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
Hi, Josh. I'm Eklund, and you're watching the Hockey Buzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. Coming to you today on this balmy Friday where there's not a whole lot of hockey news going on, so what we're going to do is something a little different. 3 or 4 days ago, I put out there a blog listing 32 cup-winning franchises. Basically, I didn't want to just, if a team won a cup for 4 straight years, I just counted that as one team. If a team won a cup for 2 years, or if a team won a cup for 1 year, obviously that was a team. So 32 teams since 1950 basically have won the Stanley Cup. And obviously some of those teams have won them multiple times, right? But I would take I would separate the 1950s Canadiens from the 1986 Canadiens, for example.
Right.
So you have all this, and I put it to you guys to vote out there, and several thousand of you did, and really came up with a really good list of what you thought the best was of all time. And the little secret, which should have been obvious because we had 32 teams, is we're putting these into brackets. Actually 16 teams, I'm sorry. 32 teams, right? Yeah, long week, sorry. 32 teams. And so indeed, so we're putting them into brackets, and we're going to have some nice little matchups here. And some of these teams, of course, are probably before your time, and I will before all of our times. So we're not going to play these games. Eventually, the plan is we'll have these games simulated in some way, shape, or form. We're not sure how yet. We're not sure if we're going to do it on the Xbox, because Xbox One new NHL comes out. That's supposed to be pretty amazing. We might simulate it on there. We may simulate it just in some kind. There's a computer program out there. There's a really cool simulations for hockey. And then we're definitely going to have people on to talk about these games. And there's going to be occasionally here and there throughout the year until we come up with our greatest Stanley Cup winning team of all time through this little competition. So it's just kind of a fun thing to do. We think so, and it's August 8th. So we thought we'd go through it because what I found out, why I did this is, this was like a last-second thing to actually put these brackets into a podcast. But what happened is, as I was putting them together, just in random form, listing the teams 1 to 32 as you guys voted on it, there were some great matchups that I thought would be fun to discuss. Just to talk about as we get there. Some of them, we will be definitely harder to talk about, but it's not all of them. So yeah, so we're gonna start there. Now I put them into Eastern, Atlantic, Northeastern, and what's the other division I did? Northwest. So we'll start. Let's start with the Atlantic. The Atlantic, okay? Because and I didn't call this the Metropolitan Division for obvious reasons. But so here, and I'm going to actually show you these. I think I figured out how to do this. It took long enough for me to do it. Let me make sure I can do it here. Here we go. I'm going to show you right off the bat here. Here's our first matchup. It's the 1 seed of the New York Islanders. This is the team that won 4 years in a row versus the 1961 Chicago Blackhawks, which is a pretty famous Blackhawks team because they sort of won a random Stanley Cup in the middle of nowhere. They were definitely an underdog that year, and they won in the midst of a whole bunch of Montreal Canadiens teams winning Stanley Cups, and Maple Leaf teams winning Stanley Cups.
Right.
That was the Maple Leafs, Montreal era of the original 6, but the 50s and 60s were owned by those two teams, and the Red Wings had one little run in there too. But this Islanders team, this is the team that broke my heart, I'll say, forever. In 1980, scoring an overtime goal to beat that Flyers team that had the 35-game unbeaten streak.
Bob Nystrom.
Bobby Nystrom. Yeah. I still can't look at the man. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting great things out of this contest, but the cool thing about this is this underdog thing. So I've got to learn more about the Hawks, and I have Bruce Scoop Cooper, who writes for the website for Hockey Buzz, knows everything about everything in the 50s and 60s with hockey, and he'll tell me what made this 61 team interesting, and tell me what they would do to match up against the Islanders. Mike?
I mean, I can give you a brief encapsulation here. You had Stan Mikita, Bobby Hull, Glenn Hall in goal, and Pierre Pilot on defense. It was a very good team, and like you said, right in between the 5 years in a row when the Canadiens won from 56 to 60, and then the 3 consecutive Leaf Stanley Cups from 62 to 64. I believe that was the only time Bobby Hull won the Stanley Cup.
Right, that is the only time Bobby Hull won the Stanley Cup, which is a really interesting part of that. And sticking now, go down to the second seed. We're going to stay in this bracket for now, and Ty and Josh, just jump in at any time because I'm going to go through these relatively quickly, but they're kind of fun to talk about. The only thing I would say what I would look forward to in that first series, the Bobby Hull Dennis Potvin matchup. Come on, you got to see that. That was Potvin in his heyday right there.
No, I'd look forward to Billy Smith high sticking somebody in the face.
Yeah, Billy Smith and Mikita would be fun, wouldn't it?
Yeah, with a butt end.
All right, next up, 2 and 7. The 1991. and 1992. This is the back-to-back Pittsburgh Penguins Stanley Cup team against the matchup, which is kind of cool because we've seen these teams play, not from these eras, but these teams play before in a Stanley Cup final. The 2008 Detroit Red Wings. This is Mario. This is Mario World, right? This is
Mario Niagar and Barrasso.
Yeah, this was a heck of a. This would be a fun matchup because this Red Wings team, remember, this is the Red Wings team that played the Penguins back-to-back in Stanley Cup Finals, winning one and losing one. And this Red Wings team is basically Nick Lidstrom's team, as I see it. This is not the Steve Yzerman Red Wings. They're in here too, but this is Nick Lidstrom's team. And I don't think they would have enough to play that Penguins team, Ty.
No, I like that Detroit team, and that's kind of when Datsyuk and Zetterberg really in their prime.
Yeah, that's true.
And I like that team, but I don't like Chris Osgood's chances against Yager and Mario Lemieux in his prime.
Yeah, and a second line with Ronnie. Ronnie Francis, and I think Joey Mullen was on that team, and Barrasso in goal. I think the Penguins are a definite favorite.
But what about the thought of Thomas Holmstrom against Tom Barrasso? Like that's an interesting. I mean, because there's two guys that didn't like when someone was in their area.
How about the fellow Swedes? Thomas Holmstrom versus Ulf Samuelsson.
Right. That's a good one. That's a good one. All right, next one will bring up plenty of controversy for everybody. As I figure out how to do this, sorry, here we go. Still learning how to get my screens on here. All right, this is the 4-5 matchup in this division, and this is the 68-69 Montreal Canadiens, okay, versus the 1994 New York Rangers. All right, so this is Messier's Rangers, obviously. This is, the Rangers team that got us to stop chanting 1940. Now we just chant 1994 instead. So this is and this Montreal team now in 68-69.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you know of that team, Mike, Josh?
I wasn't alive then.
This was the end. This was the end of the great. Like you had Beliveau at the end of his career. I believe Rogie Vachon was the goaltender in '69 for Montreal.
Right. That's right.
A lot of their players from the '60s were on their last legs. This is they still had Henri Richard and a few players who were in their prime. I don't believe they had Frank Mahovlich was still in Detroit at that point, and they hadn't drafted Lafleur or Robinson. So this was the tail end of the '60s. Canadiens, whereas I think
team earlier in the 60s.
Well, I'm sorry.
Which was a monster team throughout the 50s and 60s. This was...
Right. Yeah. I mean, I believe they won one of the Stanley Cups in between the 2 years when the Leafs won 3, and then the Leafs team in '67.
Yeah.
But and they won Stanley Cups against St. Louis at the end of the '60s when they were playing against the West, the expansion West.
Yeah, that was the only trip to the Cup.
Right, but that team compared to the teams of the 50s and early 60s wasn't as good, and it was only until like '71 when Dryden came around, and then Lafleur and Schutt and all those guys for the '70s Canadiens that they really were a force. I think the Rangers would kill that team.
Yeah, that's interesting. You think the Rangers would kill that '94 Rangers team? Remember, is not just Mark Messier, it's Brian Leetch and it's Mike Richter, right? So
and
Richter,
it's half the Oilers of the late 1980s.
Right, for sure. That '94 team. This could be the first upset. I agree with you, Mike. That could be. That's very good. I like that one. All right. So next up, and finally to finish off that bracket, we have this matchup. This is the 2010 Chicago Blackhawks versus the 1989 Calgary Flames.
Oh wow!
All right. So yeah, this is a 3-6 battle. That's why the other one was 4-5, which makes sense because that was a closer battle. 3-6. This is that Calgary team, Josh, in 1989. You definitely remember that team.
Yeah.
That was Lanny McDonald's team, of course. But he wasn't. It was more Joe Newendike's team, right? Right.
Yeah.
And Mike Vernon. That's the team of
I'm picking the Josh. What do you think? I'm picking the upset.
You're picking you think Calgary would take Chicago in that one?
I think Calgary would take Chicago.
There was a lot of leadership on
Hawks now our fans voted the 2010 Hawks slightly ahead of the 2013 Hawks.
There was a lot of leadership on that Calgary Flames team. I mean, you had Jamie McCowan was a leader, Gilmore was a leader, Newendike was a leader, Lanny McDonald. You had what's his name? I could see his face, but I can't think of his name.
Gary Roberts.
Roberts.
Yeah, Roberts was there. Oh, it's gonna drive me nuts. Hold on one second.
You had a defense of McInnes and Gary Suter, McCowan. I believe Rick Natras was part of that defensive core. You had Vernon and Walmsley, I believe, in net.
Yeah.
Hockenlube and Newendike and Joel Otto.
Tim Hunter.
Jim Poplinski. I mean, that was
Poplinski. Pep was the guy I was thinking of.
Yeah, that was a completely. I mean, not only a dynamic offensive team, but a a physical team and a solid defensive team.
Yeah, you're winning me over, Mike and Josh. And I'll say this: this is the thing about. I mean, that 2010 Blackhawks team was really good. I actually personally think the 2013 team was better than the 2010 team. But,
I agree.
But I will say this: that '89 Flames team, even though they're a one-time Cup winner, remember they went to the finals against Montreal.
No.
And they lost every other year to that mighty Oilers team, and they were probably the second best team in the league when they lost those Oilers teams.
Plus, you had a young Theo Fleury on that team as
Hawk
well.
on Lube, someone brings up. Yep, that's a good one too. That's a fun team. All right, so now moving on to the I'm going to call this. I think this is the Atlantic bracket. I'm not sure, but it doesn't really matter.
Or the Northeast bracket.
Oh yeah, this is the Northeast bracket. Yeah, this is the Montreal Canadiens bracket in some ways. All right, so this is the 1-versus-8 matchup. All right, this is the 5-time champion Montreal Canadiens. Okay, they won 5 cups in a row, from 1956 to 1960. All right, versus Vinny Lecavalier, Marty St. Louis, and Brad Richards and the Tampa Bay Lightning and Nicky
Tortorella.
Yes, and how would Hobby Bullen fare against that 1956 to 1960 team? This is this is a good one.
Tortorella versus Toe Blake.
Right, John, that's right. John Tortorella versus Toe Blake. Can you say anything else about that? I mean, that's just forget about it. That's like that's the greatest.
Montreal would wipe the floor with them. I mean, Beliveau, Boom Boom Geoffrion, Jacques Plante in goal. That team was deep and dominant, and don't get me wrong, Tampa, they won the Cup, but they are probably one of the more fortunate Cup winners of the last 20 years.
Well, here's the thing about that, Mike, and I'm not going to take any way. I'm not going to in any way, shape, or form call this an upset, right? But I'm just going to say that that Tampa team got screwed by the lockout.
Sure.
They could have been back and won a second Stanley Cup. I really thought they were that good. They were a good team.
Yeah, it's possible, but the thing that killed them was, of course, all those players came up for contract, and they had to overpay Richards, St. Louis, Lecavalier, and Boyle, and that killed their salary structure, and they couldn't have those secondary players that they needed to maybe win more cups.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying that team, you put that team against the Canadiens. I mean, granted, you're talking about
team against the 56-60 Canadiens. You're talking about an epic team. I mean, this team was ranked. This team was voted the second best team. Believe it or not, the second best team by all of our fans. So all of our readers. That Montreal team was second overall. So, all right, now going to this 2-versus-7 matchup. This is a modern day matchup. All right, so we've got a modern day matchup here in this one. This one brings us the 97 to 02 era Red Wings. This is the Red Wings team that won a bunch of cups in there versus the 07 Anaheim Ducks. Now this is the Ducks team. This was a really good team, this Ducks team. So before we just think that Ty, you can talk about this series for sure. What are your thoughts on this one?
That Anaheim team is very, very near and dear to my heart. They had Niedermeyer and Pronger.
Yep.
Pronger is like one of my favorite players to ever watch because he was just so vicious. Like you watched him and you had no idea what he was going to do. And it was good and bad at the same time, obviously. But that's tough. That's a tough one because of that defense. I love that defense so much, especially Jaguar too. During that era, he was awesome. So that's a tough one for me. But I have an Yzerman jersey at home.
Yeah.
So that team, I loved Yzerman, Shanahan, Lidstrom. Those were great teams as well. So that's a hard one, but I like defense. Defense wins. I go Anaheim there. That's my upset.
Your upset so far, Mike?
I give Anaheim a fighting chance. The only problem I have is the fact that the Ducks, compared to a team with Yzerman and Fedorov up the middle, are combating them with Andy McDonald, Todd Marchant, and Rob Niedermeyer. I mean, it's that match. I mean, you have a young Getzlaf who was, I believe, like 20 or 21 at that point, but he was a third-line guy with Perry and Dustin Penner. I mean, the depth was there, and the thing was, the physicality was there because that team would beat the crap out of you. I mean, they had a fourth line of what was it? Brad May, Sean Thornton.
Yeah, remember this is the team. This is the Wings team that swept the Lindros and Leclaire Flyers. This is a really.
But again, we're talking about Vernon and Hasek in goal.
Right.
Compared to the year that Jaguar had, which could be one of the best years in the last 40 years in terms
backed up by Brizgalov.
He was there for comic relief. Yeah, but
Exactly.
no, I mean that would be a tough out. I think eventually the Wings would probably win because they're much stronger up the middle. But I would love to watch that contest.
Yeah, that would be a
That
heck of a
would be
series.
fun.
I mean, that's some of these things are just awesome. All right, so next one, let's go to the 3-6 one to start with. Here's a good one. There's a good battle between two of our panelists, or actually all of our panelists besides me, are involved in this one. All right, this one brings us to the. Hold on, wait, I'm doing. Oh, here we go.
Oh my God.
The 1962, 63, 64 Cup champion Leafs and the 2011 Boston Bruins. All right, so this is the Leafs team this was probably the best Leafs team in the last 50 years.
I have the battle for you. Milan Lucic versus Tim Horton.
Right. This is Horton. This is Horton's Leafs, and this is Lucic's Leafs, and of course this is the Bruins team that that we just saw win a Stanley Cup not too long ago.
Yeah.
And this would be a great battle to watch too. I mean, these were two. This is Tim Thomas's Bruins. Okay, so Tim Thomas had that year. Let's not forget one of the all-time years
Yes.
as a goalie. So Thomas would have given that Leafs team fits, I do believe.
Yes, but I mean, I'll let Ty talk about the Bruins, but that Leafs team, you had Keon, you had Mahavlich, you had Johnny Bauer in goal, you had Tim Horton in his prime, not like 67 where he was almost 40 years old. I mean that team was a juggernaut, and I mean I would equate that team in terms of their dominance to the Islanders of the early '80s. I mean, that's how good how good they were and how deep they were. In 1964, they traded for a Hall of Famer in Andy Bathgate, and that gave them a third Stanley Cup. And they were a little long in the tooth in the mid '60s, and then had that year in '67. But I mean, the 2011 Bruins would be a tough out because that was an experienced, tough team. I think eventually the Leafs would win.
Ty, defend your Bruins in this battle.
Oh, I mean, it's tough. I mean, the 2011 Bruins were a miracle in more ways than one. You had Tim Thomas posting a 940 for 4 rounds. That's
right.
You also had timely goals from guys like Nathan Horton, who was a Game 7 hero numerous times. I think the Bruins, when it comes to that year's team, they got lucky with that 4-game sweep of Philadelphia, because if they don't have that, they don't get to the finals, because there's just so much hockey and there's so much overtime, and they played it to the last possible moment they could, and they destroyed Vancouver in Game 4.
Right.
I look at that Boston team. That team had maybe the most heart I've ever seen. It's similar to the 07 Ducks, I think. When you look at Brad Marchand, I always point to this. You look at Brad Marchand Game 3. He's shorthanded. He breaks through a Hart Trophy finalist in Henrik Sedin. He goes around a Selke finalist in Ryan Kessler, and then beats a Vezina finalist in Roberto Luongo for a shorthanded goal.
Yeah.
Sets the tone for everything.
That's awesome.
Moments like that stuck out about that team. And, in a series, in a hypothetical series, you never know when that moment would come, if it does at all. But that's what makes the Bruins a tough call to be like, they would lose.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you. That series looked like the Bruins were going to absolutely crush the Canucks early on. Remember, they came out in the first couple games and just destroyed them. And that was that's my favorite moment of that series still to this day. I know I've said this before, but is flying back to Vancouver for Game 7, and one of the sports writers on the plane saying, "Man, if Philippe and Luongo could just stop a beach ball in Boston, I wouldn't have to freaking go back here again."
I'd like to see Brad Marchand try to speed bag Dave Keon.
There you go. All right, next up, we got another interesting one for our panelists here, and it's another Bruins one here. So we've got the 72 Bruins and the 93 Canadiens. All right, so this is
There is the luckiest team in the history of the world.
I know you're not a fan of the 93 Canadiens, Mike. The team that took out the Maple Leafs in 7 games to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. Let's not forget.
Please. Gilbert Dion. Remember Gilbert Dion?
But they have their chance. They've got it. They're back, and now all they have to do is beat Bobby Orr.
Bruins 72 pile drive over.
I don't know. Patrick Waugh might have something to say about that.
I'm not disputing. I mean, Patrick Roy was one of the best goaltenders of all time. I mean, Jerry Cheevers wasn't exactly a.
Go to overtime. John Leclerc will kill you.
Waugh was probably the best goalie of the '90s.
I
He was
still
the big reason why the Canadiens won.
He's one of the best goalies of all time. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about that.
I
I'm
think
just
the
saying.
second best goalie of all time,
You're
yeah.
talking Bobby Orr. After he's only had two injured knees. Esposito. I think that was the year he scored 76. Kenny Hodge and Wayne Cashman, and I mean that team. Dallas Smith was the defense partner for Orr, who was a stay-at-home guy and very, very solid. I mean that Derek Sanderson. That team was incredible. I think the Bruins would destroy that Canadiens team.
And I'm broadcasting from Massachusetts, and so legally I'm not allowed to say that the Montreal Canadiens would beat any team that had Bobby Orr on it.
That's right. I love it. That's enough said. Enough said. All right, so now we go to another bracket. We've finished that bracket up, and now we're going to go to. I think I called this the Eastern bracket, but I'm not sure. I called this the Northeast officially. I'm sorry. The names are subject to change. Here's a 1-8, and again, this is another good one that you guys will like. This is this is not a very good contest. All right, so this is the Montreal, the 76, 77, 78, 79 winning Stanley Cup champion Montreal Canadiens. This is This is a run like that was just a crazy. This Montreal Canadiens team should have won the Stanley Cup throughout the 70s, but they won they won it these years in a row.
One word: next.
Yeah, against the 06 Hurricanes, who finished 7th in their conference, but did manage to somehow win a Stanley Cup against the Edmonton Oilers, who also finished 7th in their conference, right? So,
Guy Lafleur, Jacques Lemaire, and Steve Shutt against Martin Gerber.
And Martin Gerber, right, and Cam Ward, right, right. Eric Cole versus Doug Harvey, right? Or no, was he in the team?
No.
Versus Thy Robinson, yeah.
Robinson, Savard, and Lapointe.
Right.
Rod Langway was a sixth defenseman on that team with Brian Engblom. You had Mario Tremblay and Bunny Laroque and Dryden in goal. I mean, it's
that's crazy.
And Carolina, much to the chagrin of my Buffalo Sabre friends, Carolina barely beat a Buffalo Sabres team that had lost their top 5 defensemen.
Right. That's true.
They were playing the entire Rochester Amerks defense in a Game 7 of a conference final, and were leading after 2 periods. And only after by the grace of God did Carolina come back and win that game.
Right.
I enjoyed, by the way.
All right, so I kind of put this up accidentally, but here it is. The next round we have the 2012 / till now. That's why I put it like that. LA Kings versus the 1986 Montreal Canadiens. All right, this is Patrick Roy's rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
This is Canadiens team also kind of the Canadiens had those two teams in '86 and '93 that were sort of anomalies. But this '86 team, that was a pretty good team. And this Kings team, of course, we've seen win 2 Stanley Cups. So this is, you're going to have to beat. You're going to have to beat that Kings team with offense, and lots of it. I don't think this Canadian team has enough offense to beat the Kings.
Well, the Kings don't have enough offense either. I mean, that was a team.
Wow, that's true. Josh,
that was a team that struggled.
You seem discouraged.
No, I'm just trying to think which one would be better, because I think it's a toss-up between the two, to be honest with you. I mean, looking at the Montreal Canadiens team, thinking back of who's on that team, because off the top of my head I can't think. But pretty sure that Montreal might even beat the Kings there.
You had Carbonneau, you had Mats Naslund. I mean, Raw is a rookie. Bobby Smith was probably their best center. Guys like Ryan Walter. I mean, it was not the best of the Montreal Canadiens Stanley Cup winning teams, but they did have guys who were key playoff performers. Claude Lemieux, of course, he always came to the forefront when it came to the playoffs. They were an opportunistic team, but And they're very similar. I think they would both struggle to score.
I don't know. Larry Robinson?
On his last legs. I mean, he was 34 years old at that point.
Yeah.
Stefan Richer. I mean, they had some quality players.
Stefan Richer, Mats Naslund, that's what I think of when I think of this team.
They had a young Chris Chelios, Knuckles Nyland.
Yeah, Chris Chelios.
They had a lot of toughness on that team.
That's a good one. What do you think of this one, Ty?
The Justin Williams factor. That's all I gotta say.
Justin Williams factor.
See what happens. No, this LA era of hockey is pretty awesome to watch. I think.
Yeah.
They have a knack for these close games, and it just seems like they can edge out a team and just wear them down. The Montreal Canadiens good as well, obviously, but I just there's something about the LA Kings that I like this era. It's some of the best hockey I've ever seen. A lot of people say that it's kind of boring and whatnot, but I think it's tremendous hockey to watch. Talk about 3-zone play.
Oh yeah.
The Kings. I mean, I like that team. I'm biased there, and I go LA.
I mean, check out this toughness on Montreal. Mike McPhee, Chris Nyland, Chris Chelios,
John Kordick,
who
played in the playoffs.
Yes, 18 games. Claude Lemieux knew how to drop them. I mean, everyone on this team, Shane Corson, everyone on this team knew, how to fight. And
it would be a battle. It would be like a 2-1 game. This would be a battle for sure.
Could we get Ron Hextall to go after Chris Chelios? Can we get an assistant to go after Chris Chelios?
No,
I was there for that.
Go after his own teammate. Go after Claude Lemieux. That would be great.
I was at that game, the Hextall Chelios game, and I'll never forget it. Like, I was in the stands with my mom. I was sitting there watching the game, and you knew, even though it seemed on TV so random that Hextall would go and skate across the ice, as a Flyers fan who'd watched every home game from the stands that season, you just had that psychic feeling of like Hextall's going to go kill Chelios right now, and he did. That was it. It was fun. It was fun times. All right, so next up, now, Mike, we got something to talk about. These are two teams that have something very much in common in our lives. Bring these up now. All right, the 73-74 Philadelphia Flyers and the 1967 Toronto Maple Leafs. Last time each of our teams won a Stanley Cup, right there in front of us. This is the Broad Street Bullies. That's all you can say about this. This team was hated by everyone, and completely, got very. At the time, I honestly will say, and then Flyers fans might not like me saying this, but I think they would admit it if they looked into their hearts. At the time, the Flyers got really lucky that Montreal was knocked out of both of these playoff rounds because Montreal had their number and didn't seem to care about the fact that they were the Broad Street Bullies. Right. But the Flyers faced the Bruins and the Sabres in back-to-back Cup finals. Mm-hmm. And this Maple Leafs team was, of course, the remnants of that great team that just didn't get it done in #66, essentially.
Well, let's just say this: that team the following year was ready for Shady Acres Rest Home. I mean, you had two 40-year-old goaltenders in Bauer and Sawchuk, an entire defense that was over 40. Guys like Marcel Pronovo and Alan Stanley and Tim Horton. It was just, I mean, you had a lot of greats, a lot of Hall of Famers. George Armstrong. The only one of the forwards who was in his prime was Keon, maybe Mahavlich at the tail end of his prime. He was probably in his late 20s or early 30s at that point. But that team, the average age on that team was probably over 35. And I think that the youth and the vigor of the Broad Street Bullies would have toppled the Leafs. I think they would win. Especially with the number one line of Barber, Clark, and Leach.
I remember this is the Bernie Perrott.
And the Bernie Perrott, yeah.
And Bernie was almost unbeatable that year, both those years. I mean, he was the difference. He's the reason. I mean, people talk about Bobby Clark all they want to. Bernie Perrott's why the Flyers won two, and they talk about the Broad Street Bullies all they want to. But Bernie Perrott's why the Flyers won 2 Stanley Cups. There's no two ways about it. He enabled them to go shorthanded as much as they wanted to. It didn't matter. So
and don't get me wrong, the 67 Leafs weren't exactly a bunch of patsies. They were physical. It's just they were older, and I don't think they could have withstood the physical pounding of guys like Lonsberry and Clement and Schultz and Ed Van Imp and Moose DuPont and all these guys that the Flyers had who were just physical beasts.
Yeah.
So I think eventually they would have won out over the Leafs.
All right, for this next one, I wish we had Scoop here because this is a really hard one because we're going back with both these teams and it's a little bit tricky because none of us watched either of these teams play. But I have some feelings on this because my dad was a fan of one of these teams.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here we go. All right, the 1952, 53, and 54 winning Detroit Red Wings versus the 1965 and 66 winning Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
So this is Gordie Howe in his prime. This is the Gordie Howe team, big time. This is the team. My dad used to ride his bike from Camden, New Jersey, to Madison Square Garden to watch play against the Rangers.
Yeah.
As a kid, this Red Wings team was pretty. But this Montreal Canadiens team, remember, this team could have won a bunch of Stanley Cups, and just missed out on that. This is where basically the Blackhawks took their little streak out, I guess. And this team eventually. This was again towards the end of that era for the Canadiens.
But you still had Beliveau. I mean, this was a few years earlier where Beliveau and Henri Richard were, younger and still, I think, effective players. I mean, that Wings team, I mean, you're talking Terry Sawchuk and then Glenn Hall in goal. Gordie Howe, I believe it was, Delvecchio and it may have been too early for Delvecchio, but it was a powerhouse. Red Kelly. It was a powerhouse team. And the thing was, they traded Sawchuk to Boston and just replaced him with another Hall of Famer. So
Right, that's all that mattered, right? I know, that's the truth. That was what that team was all about back then. I know.
Ted Lindsay too.
Ted Lindsay.
Ted Lindsay. And then Lindsay got traded to Chicago because of the union problems in the the problems of the league with the union in the mid 50s. So.
Oh, good stuff there. Wow, hold on one second. Now I'm trying to get the other one up. I got here one more for you guys. Where is it? Did I screw this up? Hold on. Timeout. Continue to. Sorry.
I got
it somewhere. I just got to find the right one I have here.
The Canadiens of the mid '60s. I believe that was when Gump Worsley was in goal for Montreal. That was after they had traded Plante to New York. And before they went young with Rogie Vachon in the late '60s, and then after Vachon, they got Dryden in '71. So and obviously Worsley was a Hall of Fame goaltender as well. But just watching the old highlights of him flopping around without the mask was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, and this is the end of the let's not forget the end of the original Six era. So a lot after this, like a lot of those players ended up getting kind of, for those Canadian players, a lot of them got shipped to other teams. Bernie Parent was involved in that organization at that point, at that Montreal organization.
I thought he started with Boston.
With Boston. You're right. I'm sorry.
He started with Boston, went to Toronto,
I'm thinking of Doug Favell. Where was he? Was he there?
He was Boston too.
He was Boston too. All right.
Yep.
Well, that's what I know about that era. I was just born in '68, so. But the people in the chat room seem to think that Detroit would have killed that team. So we'll go with that one, too.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Now we're going to go to the final bracket, the Northwestern bracket. And our first matchup, which is a doozy, because these teams hate each other.
Is the Stanley Cup winning Canucks in... Oh, wait a second. They never won a Stanley Cup.
Okay, these teams hate each other in this first bracket here. The 85, 86, 87, and 88 Edmonton Oilers versus the 1999 Dallas Stars.
Skate in the crease.
right. Most famously known for probably not having, this was a Dallas. This is Ken Hitchcock's Stars, Modano, Brett Hull, Neuendijk, yeah, who had, he won his second cup here. Did he win 3 cups to 3 teams? I guess he did, didn't he?
Yeah. Eddie Balfour in goal.
Yep. Eddie Balfour, right? Eddie the Eagle. And then that Oilers team, of course. This is Wayne Gretzky's Oilers team. And that was just crazy. So I mean, they were picked as the best Stanley Cup winning team, by the way, of the 32 picked by all of our fans. So it's hard to imagine the Stars would have had a shot here. Yeah. But it's Hitchcock, so you have to give Hitch a little bit of credit. He would have come up with some way of frustrating Gretzky.
This is 99 is the year that I learned to hate the Buffalo Sabres. That was the year that, and it stuck with me forever. But Michael Pekka, oh god, I couldn't stand that guy. That's the first time I ever couldn't stand a player was Michael Pekka.
Ty, I learned that lesson a long time before. No, let's just say this. I despise the Edmonton Oilers of the Gretzky era, but there's no denying that they are one of the best teams in league history in terms of their dynamic offense. I don't think defensively they were, anywhere close to some of these dynastic teams. I think they would beat Dallas of 1999, but them being ranked number 1 overall is not even close.
I don't know, Josh. Do you think they're number 1 overall?
No.
All right. Moving on then to the 2nd versus 7th seed in that conference. We have another 2 teams that hate each other. The 95 to 03 era Devils versus the 09 Penguins. This is Sidney Crosby's Penguins, of course. And this would be Niedermeyer and Stevens. Danico, yeah. Brodeur, Eliash. This team,
okay.
I hated this. This is my most hated team on this entire list. This Devils team here. Oh my lord. Yeah.
We're talking about it. We're talking about a team here that I believe won 3 Stanley Cups with 3 different coaches over a span. So you're talking Lemaire, Robinson, and Burns. With I would say probably you're talking Rafalski, Stevens, Niedermeyer. Danico. I mean, I think they would destroy the Penguins.
That's interesting. Some people think depends. What do you think?
What I would pay to see Scott Stevens mouth your next to Evgeny Malkin. I mean, that is worth everything. I honestly think that those Devils teams were kind of like we were talking about the Ducks earlier, just intimidation. That intimidation factor alone, crossing that blue line. I mean, that's enough. That's enough to make me turn around. I'd be all with that.
Yeah.
And would Sidney Crosby have the guts to cut across the middle against Scott Stevens based on his, based on his? I mean, he had his concussion problems after 09 when the Steckel incident in the Winter Classic happened, but. Would anybody have the guts to do that against Scott Stevens when they know Scott Stevens is going to lay waste to them?
Well, you see, this Devils team this is a bad matchup for this 09 Penguins team. I have to say, because that 09 Penguins team is a good team. Remember, they went to the Stanley Cup Final twice in 2 years. They were this is a really solid team. But that Devils team, that Penguins team when they were at their best, I'm still convinced to this day, and I'm still convinced with these current Penguins too, and I think this is why they haven't been back. They are not an attack team. They're an counterattack team. And people, for whatever reason, it's like when they try to be an attack team, they're disastrous. But when they sit back and let you come at them and they counter you because your defense is afraid to pinch because they've got Malkin and Crosby out there and they're afraid to take. This is how this Penguins team destroyed the Flyers in 09. And this team is just completely that. And I've seen them play it many times, and that was the difference. The problem is the Devils would never let them play that game. And the Devils would sit back and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait. And when the Penguins have a team that sits back and waits and waits and waits and waits on them, they lose. Because the Penguins go at them, and then that exposes Marc-Andre Fleury to 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, and then they're screwed.
Yeah. They would never attack. The Devils would never attack.
Yeah, they would never attack. They would just sit back and they would wait and wait and wait. So, all right, here we go. This is a good one. Here's another good one. All right, we have 2 more to go. All right, here we go. This is all right. The 1947 to 47, 48, 49, and 51 winning. No, I think there was one they didn't win in there, but it's 47, 48, and 51.
49 and 51.
Right. All right, so this is a Maple Leafs team against the 1990 Edmonton Oilers, which is Messier's Oilers. Okay, yes. So this is after all said and done, the Oilers, lose Gretzky. They don't win for 1 year there when the Calgary Flames take it, and then they come back and they win again, which was an impressive, Mark Messier feat. And also, who was in goal for that? It was like Ranford, and it was a crazy Oilers team, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So but they still had enough players left, and then a couple years later they would go win it again in New York. That
Right.
team. But this was a really good Maple Leafs team though. This, I mean, from every, I obviously never saw them play, but the era was.
Well, I mean, in doing the columns that I'm doing right now about the best players in Leaf history, wearing certain numbers. I've been looking up some of the names of the players and have studied the Leaf teams of that era.
Yeah.
I mean, Turk Broda in goal, guys like Teeter Kennedy, Gus Mortson. I mean, there's a ton of really good players on those teams, and they won 4 Stanley Cups in 5 years, and then didn't win another Stanley Cup until '62. So there was an 11-year gap when the Canadiens and the Red Wings dominated the '50s. But that was, I mean, the post-war Leafs were just a completely solid and dominant team. I think that they would fare pretty well against the Oilers, who then didn't have Gretzky. You were relying on. I mean, Messier was the central player, and they still had guys like Anderson, but you were relying on guys like Peter Klima to score goals. They still had the core of that dynastic Oilers team with Gretzky, and it's a feat for them without Sather and without Gretzky that they still won a cup. But I think the Leafs would beat them.
Yeah, I would say so. Finally, and I just realized I screwed up before, and of course I was doing this as fast as I could and that Bruins, when we talked about the Bruins 2011 team winning before, that was not supposed to be them. This is the matchup they were supposed to be in. I don't know who was in that matchup, but I will find out. I apologize for that. But I was putting this together fast. This is actually the matchup that they were supposed to be in, this next matchup. So anyway, I knew it would make one mistake. It would have to be on the last one for sure. But this is the reason I remember is because this when I saw this matchup put together first before that one, this matchup is the matchup we all want to see, and this is a great matchup. So this is it, and I will show you now as we go in here. We have this team, the 2013 Hawks and the 2011 Bruins. So this is the second Hawks team. And the Bruins team that basically lost to that Hawks team in the Stanley Cup final in 2013. So this is Tim Thomas versus Tuukka Rask. So this is Tim Thomas's Bruins. You know the difference between those two Bruins teams, Ty, better than anybody. The team that lost in 2013 versus the team that won in 2011.
Oh yeah.
Who was better? What was the better team?
2011. 2011 had a third line.
Okay.
The 2013 Bruins did not have one. With the Horton addition the previous offseason, the 2011 team had that revamped third line, which had Rich Peverley, Chris Kelly, and Michael Ryder. And those guys were so key, especially late in the playoffs when teams were focusing their top line, their top defensive pairings on that Lucic, Krejci, Horton line. That's when those guys really came through. 2013 Bruins, it was Paille, Kelly, and Sagan by the end of it, and that was really a mess. Those guys didn't complement one another in terms of the style of play they needed. So exactly. I think the 2011 Bruins are more of a complete team than the 2013 version that lost to Chicago. Plus, Chara's a few years younger.
Yeah.
He doesn't break down as easily against Taves and Kane. So it's tough because like we said earlier, that Bruins team, they caught some breaks there and they had some luck bounce their way. In front of Tim Thomas. I think one of the big things that could still swing this in Chicago's favor, though, is their forward makeup. I think they still could have kind of victimized guys like Thomas Caberlet, who was on the 2011 Bruins.
right.
So that's still a harder one for me than
it's a tough one because that Hawks team, like I said before, I think is a better Hawks team than the Hawks team that won the Cup in 2010. And Crawford, you have Crawford in goal, who was, I would take Niemi. I would take the 2010 Niemi over the 2013 Crawford, but Crawford still had his moments when he was really good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, there's two distinct differences. One is Yager versus Recchi, because Yager in 2013 was the veteran guy, and that was the Recchi role. In 2011, and I think Recchi was much superior in terms of as a two-way player, as a leader, as a clutch scorer. I think he was much more dependable. And the thing is, in 2011, you had Horton, who was scoring clutch key goals, Game 7 overtime against the Canadiens, and I think that was one of the things in 2013 that team missed.
Yeah, I think that 2011 team was more battle tested than the 2013 team. They had the comeback against Toronto, but then they breezed through the East. They lost one game in the next 2 rounds.
Right.
Thanks for reminding me, Ty.
Well, they took apart the Penguins. Remember, this is that 2000. That team was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, and they I think in a way they were, they had to go through. Thomas Vokoun didn't play that well against the Bruins that year, and so I just think that 2011 team is more battle tested than the 2013 version. So I could see them giving a greater fight. I have visions of Michael Ryder ripping snapshots over Corey Crawford's glove side, but I mean, so we thought the same thing that Jagr would do, and he just out a million times in one round.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I talked about Jagr a little bit too, and and I mentioned how I thought Jagr was sort of I thought Jagr got a lot of bad bounces in that last series, and I thought Jagr could have very easily been a hero and probably still be a Boston Bruin today if a couple things go a couple different ways. Just on some of those overtime, like hitting the post in overtime a couple times, It
wasn't a lack of trying, that's for sure. I mean, that guy, I've never seen someone work as hard before, after a game than Jaromir Jagr. I mean, he was on the ice 4 hours after games wearing weighted vests, just trying to improve his conditioning and his stamina. And I mean, he tried, and he didn't come up with the goals that the Bruins thought they were going to get, but I saw no reason not to bring him back, and I think last year in Jersey you saw that he still has it. I mean, ageless wonder, that guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right, time's running up here. We are going to just basically let's touch with Timo's line tomorrow because we've got plenty of time. And Timo's considering, if you haven't seen the news, a $10 million offer from Jokerit. And so is Josh, because Josh has to get going, and Josh has to go decide whether or not he's going to take a $10 million offer from Jokerit or not.
I wish. I take one. Send me $1 million, I'll do it.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, take 1% of that. That's 100. That's crazy. Anyway, all right, guys. Thanks so much, Ty. Thanks, Mike and Josh. Great week again, guys. We will be back on Monday. Next week, we're going to be doing some different things. We're going to be doubling up on some shows because the week after that, I'm going on vacation. So we're going to be doing some days where we do 2 shows. And we'll let you know in the chat room. You can watch them live. They won't be released. We'll definitely broadcast them live, but we won't. Then they'll sort of disappear into the YouTube ethers for a while until they're released after that. So, yeah, but just, guys, remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a great weekend. Talk to you soon.